Hi guys, and welcome to my review of Toy Story 5. This was a movie that I went into with quite a bit of excitement, quite a bit of anticipation, just to kind of like give you that frame of reference. I was kind of like 13 when the original Toy Story came out. I really liked it back then. I still think that that trilogy of first three movies is kind of like the perfect trilogy. And as a result, when Toy Story 4 came out, I thought that was a massive gamble, because it's so like, I don't feel like, although there's trilogies out there that are all kind of critically acclaimed and commercially successful. I felt it was a real rare thing to have a trilogy that maintained the consistency throughout all three movies that well, and also had kind of stuck the landing as well as that third one did. That's right, the narrative and the arcs that it kind of goes through, and how it kind of comes full circle, makes it work so well as a trilogy. So I thought the fourth one was a gamble. I do still really like the fourth one. I think it did do enough to kind of like justify its existence. Obviously, I won't go kind of too much into my feelings for Toy Story 4, because I am going to be doing a ranking of all five Toy Story films, ranking them worst to the best. So I'll elaborate on kind of like my thoughts on Toy Story 4 there, just to kind of like stay on topic here, because you came here to hear my thoughts on Toy Story 5. So yeah, basically, off the back of that, or maybe taking reassurance from my experience with Toy Story 4, I went into this one feeling more assured, and I think I was kind of like reaffirmed just by kind of like the information we had at our disposal, going into this movie, about what this movie was going to basically focus on, and that it was going to kind of like bring tech in, and it was going to kind of look at kind of how now kids are kind of like engaging with iPads and tech devices and stuff like that. And obviously, just as a parent myself, that's something I can like really relate to. Yeah, I just was really intrigued, and again, I think like again, it just on that level, it kind of does. It justifies its existence, because still has its roots very much kind of like in reality. But so like, as much as there's fans of this franchise that argue that this franchise should have stayed a trilogy, and I totally accept that. I think that has a lot of validity, but at the same time, I think in hindsight, when you have a franchise like this that literally focuses on how toys, the relationship between toys and children, and the interactions and the impacts and stuff like that, it would seem kind of like bizarre that if we kind of like didn't have this franchise kind of get into this kind of tech age and kind of commenting on that. So yeah, I was kind of like more reassured that they were going to be able to make this one work. And on the whole, guys, I that is kind of like how I feel about it. I did still really like this movie. I did feel like that I think that the way that they handled the tech was, I did really like the way that they handled this storyline with the tech and stuff, because I do think that it doesn't. Fortunately, what kind of they do really well is that they kind of work this in a way as a kind of a bit of a cautionary tale about tech, and children kind of like being kind of like zombified by it and stuff like that. But I don't think it ever becomes preachy. It never kind of like really suggests a resolution to this issue, and it kind of, and there are there is, I will kind of comment on a little bit more about that when I get to kind of some of the things I didn't like so much about this movie. But yeah, I think that it does a really good job of, kind of not really offering any sort of like resolutions, and just and it doesn't ever sort of become off as kind of preachy. Um, so. Um, so therefore, I do kind of like the fact that they did show some restraint there, because I think that otherwise, if they had gone kind of like really preachy, I think that maybe would have been more divisive and opened up to maybe more criticism, especially with it coming from like a Disney product. I could understand people being that kind of like taking that kind of like cynical viewpoint of kind of like this movie going, hey parents, hey mum and dad, take it, take your kids' attention away from that iPad. Also, don't forget to renew your subscription to Disney Plus, and don't forget that new tech Buzz Lightyear to buy them. So yeah, kind of like going on that, there is a subplot in this movie about there's this army of like tech Buzz Lightyears. And all throughout the movie, you're kind of curious to see how all of that kind of ties into the main plot that we have going on here. I feel like that we have, again, just like the other installments, we have a new group of characters that are kind of like introduced here. We basically have some more kind of like tech cameras. We have like we have basically a camera character. And then we basically have a character voiced by Conan and O'Brien, who is basically literally just a potty training device. So this kind of like opens the door for like a lot of kind of like potty humor. So yeah, I mean, kind of like on the front, I feel like with this movie, is kind of I think on the humor front, I don't think that this movie is. I felt like this movie didn't this movie I was the movie where I think the humor worked for me the least. I kind of like can like myself like kind of like laugh and significantly more in all of the installments of the Toy Story films than I did here. And I think that we kind of have. And ultimately, I feel like we are going to basically, and I think ultimately, how you feel about this movie is really going to be just determined by how you find yourself as a Toy Story fan. In terms of what I kind of like mean by that is, I think that maybe how your feelings towards them, continuing this franchise beyond that trilogy. I think that a lot of that is going to kind of determine how much you're going to enjoy this movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that even for those who kind of like preferred it as a trilogy, I still think that, that this movie still has enough of, that Pixar magic. It does, like I said, enough to kind of like justify its own existence. So I think that, there's still going to be, so I think for those who have kind of like even, got some enjoyment out of Toy Story 4, I think that they're still going to get enjoyment out of this one. I think that, I think it's still continues to tick all the boxes. I don't think that it's got to that point where it feels like we've just got this sequel just because it's kind of like a cash-in type thing. I think that, like I said, it's still kind of ticking all the boxes, and it's still kind of, offering its insights, commentaries, and it's still kind of like justifying its existence type thing. So yeah, I mean, but I do think that ultimately, because what I kind of like mean by it is that obviously this is a movie. This is the installment that really kind of cements the focal shift in terms of its narrative, in terms of this franchise kind of going forward, because obviously like at the end of our trilogy we had obviously the toys being passed down to Bonnie, and now we basically have, so obviously in the fourth one we kind of like had the toys belonging to Bonnie, but yeah, it's still very much the purpose of our fourth movie is that kind of like to bring Woody's story full circle and provide this little epilogue bit to that. So I kind of like feel like here we get a lot more focus on Bonnie's character, which I think was like is another positive, because we never really kind of got that too much. I think this is the one that puts the most focus and the most kind of like insight into the children or the child that actually has these toys. So I thought that was really fresh. So I think that for those who are maybe kind of like have watched Toy Story 4 and they just haven't kind of warmed to Bonnie yet in the way that they maybe warmed to Andy, I think that this movie goes quite a way to kind of like rectifying that, because you get a lot more insights and a lot more time with Bonnie in this movie. But yeah, ultimately, guys, I do feel like because this is obviously the way that this movie is kind of like set up with kind of toys being discarded in favor of this like new lily pad. I think that it kind of is only fitting that obviously this is a very Jessie centric story as well, because that very much kind of like plays into the story that we get here, where we basically get it kind of like this notion is kind of like, obviously we know about Jessie's kind of backstory, and that plays into it. So we get some little, and I don't want to reveal too much, but we get a little bit more exploration on that, and we get even some kind of like payoff. So that was really kind of satisfying. So I think all of those things worked, but I think ultimately, as maybe fans who have maybe grown up with this franchise, who've been there kind of like from day one, maybe they are going to find it a bit of a hard pill to swallow, that there is this shift in focus, that suddenly that a lot of front and center characters here, like Woody, like Buzz, like Rex, like Mr. Potato Head, all of them are kind of like sidelined here, even with like Woody and Buzz, it's sort of like there's never really they don't really have too much to do here. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of it does almost feel like it's kind of bringing Woody back into the fold just because this kind of franchise kind of like demands it. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like but yeah. Also, I don't feel like that this movie really, like I said, there's this subplot going on with these tech Buzz Lightyears, and I don't think that the way the payoff of that is kind of like works the best. I think like I could have done without it, to be honest with you. I think if all of that had been kind of like sidelined in favor of us getting to spend more time with classic characters that I mentioned, I think that just for me, I would have been like kind of more satisfying. And also, like, my only other like real like nitpicky gripe with this is because the way that they handle this tech storyline. As much as I kind of like appreciate them showing a bit of a restraint in them not fall into a trap and making this kind of like too kind of like preachy or offering too much solutions, I think that there was still enough here there was still quite a bit of untapped potential in exploring these things, especially with how like renowned Pixar are for kind of like offering these little insights that their grown-ups can take away as well. I think that they're really good at that. So I think that, you know, there's all these little nuggets in throughout the story where you basically get these little kind of like establishments where it's sort of like, you know, we have Bonnie and basically she's kind of like feeling isolated, so they get her this lily pad to kind of like help her kind of connect with more other kids. And we have a new character here called Braze as well, where we see kind of like their parents. They're kind of like in, you know, in kind of like locked in, looking like they're kind of like streaming or something like that. So it feels like there was a lot of this untapped potential. There was a lot of this commentary that they could have made where it's sort of like mirroring behavior. Do you know what I mean? And they just didn't kind of go down that route. And I think that maybe for parents that would be a little bit unsatisfying. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, the way that they kind of work or don't work with this movie in terms of how the parents kind of like relate and interact with this kind of tech that's come into their kids' lives. You know, you do kind of like wonder, well, what are kids going to come take away from after watching this movie, you know? So yeah, but on the whole, guys, like I said, I think that I did still really enjoy this movie. Like I said, I still think that it kind of like ticks all the boxes, and it still, you know, justifies its own existence and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm glad that we kind of like got to a point where we have a Toy Story film that kind of like has kind of like addressed this kind of like tech age. So yeah, on the whole, guys, I am still going to give this one a thumbs up. I am going to give this a an 8 out of 10, and yeah, I would recommend you guys to go out and see this at cinemas if you're still a fan of the franchise. So yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts on Toy Story 5 is, if you've seen it, or if you haven't yet, what's your excitement level, or what's your anticipation level, all of that stuff. Let me know down in the comment section. Yeah, please feel free to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. You guys take care.